A very good afternoon. On behalf of Rubber Skill Development Council, I welcome everyone to today's webinar, A Global Perspective on Skill Development. I am Shivani Nagpal, CEO RSDC, and your host for the webinar. The global lockdown due to COVID-19 epidemic has not only had an immediate impact on the world economy, but on learning opportunity for youth with the closure of technical and vocational education and training institutions. General education subjects and theoretical learning can be delivered remotely, but practical training that depends on equipment available only in training center is more challenging. In the current situation, the challenge has been to change the technical and vocational education and training provision rapidly from real life to digital, or in some cases blended to fill in the gaps and provide various platforms for delivery. Today, RSTC webinar is on skill development during and beyond COVID-19. It aims to share innovative country experiences with evidences on effectiveness of strategies aimed at finding the immediate and longer term effects of COVID-19 crisis on technical vocational education and skill development system. We have today very eminent speakers from across the globe to share their viewpoint and the way forward on global perspective on skill development. On behalf of all of us at Rubber Skill Development Council, a warm welcome to all our speakers, and we all are eagerly looking forward to hearing from them. I would also like to welcome our participants who have logged in from across India and from different parts of the world, and hope that we will have a lot of takeaways at the end of the session. Now, without further ado, I am pleased to introduce you to Mr. Vinod Simon, Chairman RSDC, as a moderator of today's session. He is the Executive Director of Simco Rubber in Chennai, in India, and Chairman of RSDC. Before I hand over to Mr. Simon, may I request the audience to ask your question in question and answer tab, and it will be taken after the speakers' presentations are complete. So without any further delay, I would like to welcome Mr. Vinod Simon, Chairman RSTC, to moderate today's session. Thank you. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Shivani. Hello, everybody. And it's such a pleasure to be sitting here in the midst of such an elite panel from across the globe, different continents and different countries. Let me start by wishing our panelists and our friends from Malaysia Selamat Petang. It's a good evening to all of you in Malaysia. Masa al Khair to all of you in Egypt. Guten Tag to all of you in Germany. A very good morning to my friends in the United Kingdom. And namaste and good evening to all my friends in the rubber fraternity and the skilling ecosystem in India. The world changed over the last 3 months. Little did we think that in the month of February or March that everything is going to be so different going ahead. It still seems to be going in the same trajectory due to the lack of knowledge on the virus and the pandemic. If there was more clarity on the pandemic, maybe the decision making would have been more easier and we would have been possibly seeing some light at the end of the tunnel. But the new normal itself, which is emerging today, is to learn to live with the virus, finding new SOPs in everything that we do in our lives, whether it's in our workplace or at home, or it is travel, or just going out to eat in a restaurant. There is a new SOP which is emerging, a new normal in every aspect of our lives. And that is what precisely is going to be happening in the skilling ecosystem as well. How are we going to deal with this? Now, if you look at the pandemic, it is global. The problem is common across all countries, which means we could find solutions more on a common platform as well. We could share good practices to ensure that we can have the solution to the problem sooner than we expect. In India, as the name goes, skilling needs to be hands-on. Now, if you look at the education in schools and colleges today, they were quick to jump onto the bandwagon of digital learning. Without much delay, most of the schools and colleges jumped onto digital platforms for online classes. There's nothing like getting into a campus for a child and a live student-teacher interaction, right? But The second best available option was digital platform. And I find that most schools kind of caught up with academics, are able to keep in sync with the moving times. At least the children are not left behind as far as academics is concerned. They are not yet there, but they have found an SOP and a solution moving forward. But when it comes to vocational training and skilling, it's very different. You may have, okay, maybe we can look at a balance between the two. Maybe we could have digital platforms where theory is involved in the skilling, which may be close to only 25-30% of the entire training program. But what about the remaining 60-70% of the program which needs hands-on, working on machines, working on equipments? Now, new normals have to emerge for that as well. How are training centers going to be able to take trainees on board? How are we going to train taking care of the health and safety, which is today the top priority for anybody? Without compromising on safety and health, what kind of new SOPs can emerge in the skilling ecosystem? In India, the government of India, along with the Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship and the National Skill Development Corporation and the different stakeholders are brainstorming as to find out what could be the new SOPs. There are a lot of ideas emerging, although nothing is finalized yet, but I'm sure we will reach there soon. This is one of the reasons that we are here today, to find out what we are adopting in different countries. And that's precisely why this webinar was arranged, so that each of us could understand what is happening in our different countries in the skilling ecosystem, try to adopt good practices and see how we can take it forward. So we have in our midst 4 panelists, one from Malaysia. We have Dato Sri Ganesh. We have Dr. Abdou from Egypt, Mr. Peter from Germany, and Mr. Jonathan from UK. I will introduce them in detail just before they are going to be speaking. But before we get off start hearing from them, the 4 key areas I wanted them to touch upon was, what is the model of skill development they have in their countries? What kind of impact COVID had on those models? And what was the new normal or the new innovative techniques they've used in the present context to get going on the skill development practices? And of course, there is tremendous potential today to collaborate and to partner with each country. So some ideas and suggestions from them how we could collaborate moving forward. Without further delay, I'm very happy to bring on our first speaker for the evening, Dato Sri Ganesh. Mr. Ganesh is a Vice President of the International Vocational Education and Training Association, overseeing the region of South Asia. He is also the Honorable Vice Chairman of the Malaysian IoT Association, the largest conglomerate association for industry players, stakeholders of the IoT technology in Malaysia. Due to his notable contributions all over the nation in respect of disruptive technologies for and in education and the training industry, Dato Sri Ganesh is appointed as a director of the Penang STEM, which is under the purview of the Penang state government. On top of the above mentioned appointments, Dato Ganesh was also given recognition for his tireless efforts and contribution when he won the IVETA President's Award and Sustainable Entrepreneur Award from the Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation in the year 2017. In the same year, he was also the finalist for the BET UK Asia Awards. He is one of the pioneers in the TVET and skill training in Malaysia. SG Education Group, which was founded by him in the 1999, as to date has about 5 premier skill training institutes, which boasts accreditation from across national and international certification bodies and universities. He is a technology enthusiast in line with Industry 4.0, coined the elements of digital talents in the TVET training to ensure that trainees perfectly fit into digital economy in any industry that they join. It's such a pleasure to have you, Mr. Ganesh, in our midst, and looking forward to hearing from you. Over to you.
Thank you, Shivani, and then thank you, Mr. Simon, together with my other colleagues here. I would say instead of a new normal, the world has come to a new normal. I would say the world has become even smaller right now, because all of us are connected, and all of us are well communicated over different regions on terms of TVET. See, further ado, as mentioned, I was involved in TVET for the last 20 years, and I will just jump into the. I think many of you are interested to know how does TVET works in Malaysia, right? Okay, well, in I think most of the countries we have obvious three stream of pathway, we call it. One will be the higher education. The second one will be technical and vocational education. The third one could be vocational skills training, right? We can never move away from these elements when it comes to TVET, all right? As for Malaysia, when you say the higher education, the institutions involved are the universities and other institutions of higher learning, both public and private, right? And they cater for the workforce preparation of professionals and managerial personnel such as engineers, architects, and surveyors. Then we have the second stream, which we call the technical and vocational education, right? The institution under this stream would be polytechnics, technical colleges, and more recently community colleges. All right, we call it community colleges, and they prepare the workforce for the supervisory personnel such as technical assistants and supervisors and so on. All right, and the interesting part here, the third stream, which will be the vocational skills training, which the participating institution would be skills training institution, public and private, right? And they prepare the workforce for skilled and semi-skilled workforce, right? Now, it's well defined in Malaysia, and we do it a little different than the others. I noticed this when I travel on my, when they invite me over for our TVET conferences and so on. I see that we have different systems in place, but at the end of the day, the objective is to create a sustainable, skilled personnel, which I would say highly notable and skilled workforce for the nation, right? As I mentioned just now, obvious three streams: tertiary or higher education in universities and other higher educational institutions, technical vocational education undertaken largely in formal school system and Ministry of Education. And for the post-secondary TVET, including skills training undertaken through the skills stream of the secondary vocational school, but predominantly by public and private skill training institution, right? And all our skill standards are derived from the skills training based on the National Occupational Skills Standard. We call it the NOS, right? So the basis of the TVET system in Malaysia is based on NOS, which is National Occupational Skills Standard, and they are divided into mainly three subsystems. Okay, the first subsystem, as I mentioned to you, the technical education and vocational training undertaken in schools at the upper secondary level under the Ministry of Education. When it comes to this, right, it was completely integrated into general education system, leading to Malaysian Certificate of Education as the leaving qualification. So these are the technical education and vocational training undertaken in school. This is the first subsystem. Then we have the second subsystem, whereby the technical and vocational training that did not come under Ministry of Education, right, apart from Ministry of Education, were administered by other federal ministries. We have the Ministry of Human Resources, we have Ministry of Youth and Sports, Ministry of Entrepreneurial Development, and Ministry of Agriculture, and also private training institution come under these second subsystems, right? Then we have the third subsystem, which is the standardization and certification of occupational skills based on the NOS, National Occupational Skills Standard. It started with 3-tier level skills certification system, whereby it comes from basic, intermediate, and advanced. But at the recent development, they have also articulated this towards a 5-level skills qualification framework, which was recently introduced. But I would say it was introduced prior, but now we are adopting that into our national accreditation system, right? So as I mentioned earlier, we have 3 different subsystems who capitalized by various agencies. there's pros and cons here. The pros will be we have skill certification system in all the ministries to make sure that the skill standards in each ministries are met. But the cons will be have to adhere. We don't have a cross-platform skill system. There's no articulation. For instance, if you have done your level 2 in Ministry of Agriculture, they carry a different certificate. For instance, so when they come to a different workforce segments, they'll be equally confused when another guy comes with the same level 2 or level 3 certification system. We are looking into rectifying this. Of course, this takes effort and this takes drive between the public and the private institution as well, right? What recently we have done the last couple of years is most of our national occupational skills standard were actually co-created with the industry, meaning the associations, the industry needed, they co-create this so that it will be up to date and it will be well adopted in the industry as well. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, how is this possible in implementing? We go by levels, as I mentioned, level 2, level 3, level 4. And once they reach the level 4, it's considered the Malaysian Skills Diploma. And just very recent, what they have done is that diploma is articulated towards the university program itself, where they can continue their degree and so on. But the perception in Malaysia when it comes to skill training, right, is a bit different. It's like, I would say still they have the mindset of second-class education when it comes to vocational. All right, they're not looking at it as the another vertical which gives them an opening towards getting a successful career and so on. But unlike Germany, they have infused a good training system in advance. All right, they adopted this very well during the Industrial Revolution and so on. But here, they're still looking at it as a second-class training system. So I think it's a responsibility of the private training institution like us and also the government to ensure that this doesn't stay there. It should bring up, to escalate it to another level and whatnot. But if I may, Mr. Simon, I would say that during the COVID-19, all of us were caught off guard. Okay, we were issued a statement by various ministries to not to operate. I think that's the most responsible way of I would say to break the chain, right? So that we are safe and we can sustain in this pandemic. But one must not forget that this also interrupts our skills training model and skills training system, because you see, when somebody enroll in a program, they are the program is well structured for a couple of months so that they can articulate towards, they can work towards getting into the industry. But what took place here is there were no guideline on what to do next. So the government was good enough, the Ministry of Human Resources the Department of Skill under the Ministry of Human Resources was good enough to get some of these private TVET colleges together and start enforcing the online studies. But again, how much can you do through online when it comes to skills, right? We understand there is the knowledge segment in skills and also the practical segments. We can cover the knowledge segments, but knowledge segment carries around 30% of the entire skill training program, you see. So you cannot be doing months and months or weeks on just on knowledge. So what we did was we were a little proactive. We were working on our, I would say, initiative called the digital TVET. We want to digitize TVET, all right? Meaning our earlier objective is to ensure that we don't want to bore students, you know. When student comes to classroom, we don't want to bore them with theoretical studies. We want them get hands-on, and we want them to get directly into the practical part of it. So what we have, what we implemented at the early stage, we scanned our labs, right, and we build learning materials and we build learning items from the scanned lab using a 3D technology where you can walk through your lab and you can learn you can use this as reference as well. All right. So this was used during our during this COVID-19 pandemic situation, where we want them to feel the labs that which they will do practical, which they will be doing the practical soon, right? So this kept us going. Apart from Google Classroom, apart from teachers, trainers' engagement, we kept them going by having the digital TVET. If I may, I can show you. I can show you a short video on how this took place. It is a blended training using video, animation, and also a 3D walkthrough. If I may, I'll just gonna connect to my YouTube, and I'm gonna share the screen just a moment.
And then connection T-junction and compressor. How to do the connection to make a system extend different. First,
So if you notice that what actually took place is that
every organization has data.
sorry about
We
that.
have sales data, visitors data, clients data, staff data, data everywhere.
Sorry about that. Okay, what took place is that we were prepared for this to digitize all our labs and to build the practical part of it using animation and various techniques to address the needs, whereby our earlier objective was to save time where students can learn through their mobile and so on before coming into the class. It also serves as a reference point. But during the pandemic, this has come into place where we find this very relevant to keep them going, right? So we actually connected this to our learning system, and they've been assessed based on the theory and how they have been using this navigation or walkthrough in the labs, right? So we can actually measure, we can do analytics whereby we see how much time they spend and what have they been like spending time on looking at the various type of practical component and so on. So I think this is one of the model that I would not say that we planned it. We find this very relevant during this pandemic time, and we want to build on it more. And another important crucial point is that we all know that the skilled personnel all over the world are very limited, right? So you cannot expect as the number of students grow, your skilled trainers grows as well. It doesn't go like that. It carries experience, it carries good methodology of teaching and all that. By having this kind of system, by we having skills that can be showcased to many, what we can do is we can use this platform for pre-recorded videos or having a crowdsource kind of platform where people actually demonstrate their skills and upload it in the platform and they get it rated. All this keeps them going during the pandemic. And another important issue is that you cannot get working adults back into the classroom when it comes to technical vocational education and training. Even though they want to learn, but how many of them that you can bring back to the classroom and put them in the lab and get them to study, right? So this kind of platform will eventually help to curb this kind of issues, right? I think a model where we all agree that to recognize a developed nation, you need to have 30% and above skilled workforce in that country, right? A certified one. So how to accelerate this is only possible by having various channels to get them skilled, right? So this is how we were addressing the issue. It gives us a new perspective and gives us a leverage of, instead of building more infrastructure when it comes to skills training, we can reach more people with, I would say, relevant and certified contents out there, right? So one trainer can reach up to millions of learners rather than one trainer approaches 25 students in a classroom or 50 students in a classroom. Right? So this is the best practices that I was excited to share with all of you, and thank you again for the opportunity given to us, right?
Thank you, Dr. Sri Ganesh. That is really interesting. You know, especially the practical model that you just showed through the video. I think there's a lot of takeaways from that. I think I've got a lot of questions to ask you though, but we'll wait till the end of the 4 speakers before we get into the Q&A. So we move on to our second speaker for the day, Dr. AbouElfadl Abdou. He's an international certified trainer, the Faculty of Leadership Development Center at the Cairo University, a senior expert, TVET Quality Assurance and Accreditation, and e-learning instructional designer and trainer. The TVET Egypt project, co-funded by Egypt and the European Union, enhancing the relevance and quality of the TVET system through curriculum development, capacity building, and quality assurance. Dr. Abdou has a PhD in education research, evaluation methods, quality training from the Cairo University, and has more than 23 years of experience in education and training, which includes more than 15 years of experience in education quality assurance, and also has professional experience with the Ministry of Technical Education and Training, Ministry of Manpower, Tourism, Housing, Productivity and Vocational Training, and the National Authority for Quality Assurance and Accreditation of Education, as well as the Ministry of Higher Education and Scientific Research Technical Colleges. He involves in successfully enhancing procedures, processes, policies, assessments, internal verification, learning toolkits for TVET with the Ministry of Education in Egypt and Jordan. He has key experience with international donors such as the EU, GIZ, and the USAID. He's also previously worked as a presenter for educational programs on Egyptian TV channel. Closely associated with the government of Egypt. Over to you, Dr. Abdou.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Vinod, for this kind invitation. Thank you, Shwani. Thank you, Mr. Dato. Thank you, Mr. Jan and Mr. Jonathan. My name is Dr. AbouElfadl, and I will share my screen with you to introduce my experience about what we're talking today. Shwani, could you let me share my screen?
Yes, sir. You can share your screen.
Okay. Global perspective for skill development in present context, Egypt model for 2020. As you see, Egypt is a beautiful part of the world. Egypt have a big window into big sea in the world, the Red Sea and the Mediterranean Sea. The point number one I will talk is the model of skill development in Egypt. This model is based on competency-based program to enhance the skills for development skills. Egypt competent worker, we mean by this the worker who are able to apply his skills, knowledge, and attitudes to the standards of performance required in the workplace. That's what we mean by a competent worker in Egypt. And the competency-based program, as you see, is the key to success to enhance and development these skills for every worker in Egypt for the four kinds sector: industrial and agriculture and hotels and commercials. This competency is consisting of knowledge and skills and attitudes. It's three pillars. We work together. We work in parallel between the knowledge and the skills and attitudes, and we put all of our focus on skills. Competency, the proven ability to use knowledge, skills, and attitude in workplace or study situations, and the professional of personal development. We mean by competency here, learner is able to. We mean by knowledge, the body of facts, principles, and practice that is related to a field of work or study. Learner know. Skills, ability to apply knowledge and use how know to complete task and solve a problem. We focus on learner can or understand. Attitude, a set of emotions, beliefs, behaviors towards a particular object, person, or thing, or event. Learner feel or appreciate. Competency or competent worker is an equation consisting of knowledge, skills, attitudes. That is our equation for competence worker. The skills, we developed some skills based on industrial, ready-made garment operator, electrical installation technical, automotive mechanical, in agriculture, fishery operator, food industry operator, dairy production agent, for commercial, bookkeeper, insurance commercial, social agent, and secretary. For tourism, food productions, food and beverage service, hospitality. There is more than 35 programs developed for TVET sector in Egypt, covering the four sectors. Competency-based, how we make sure that is, our worker is applying for this development program, we make competency-based assessment. The result of our competency-based assessment is two results. If he's competent, he can find a job easily in any labor market based on his or her skills. If he's not competent yet, he needs to reassess again and make sure that he has the competence and pass the exam. To make sure that is the assessment is based on our rules and regulations, we make two types of verifications. Type number one is internal verifications, and the other is external verifications. The purpose of internal verifications to ensure that assessment standards are implemented to the required standard, or TVET learner assessed in a consistent, valid, reliable, and transparent manner. Internal verification and external verification is an important element of our TVET quality assurance system. This is our TVET quality assurance system built on layer, as you see, starting from validation of TVET program. After that, accreditation of TVET institution, and this layer is linked with self-assessment and improvement plan. After that, approval to deliver and assess TVET programs. After that, competency assessment, internal quality assurance verification, external quality assurance verifications, and final certification. The purpose of external verification to ensure that all TVET institutions making consistent and accurate assessment have an internal verification system that is operating effectively. The second point is the current situation linked to COVID-19. This COVID-19 is make some effect in Egypt. The effect number one is distribute the skill development program, partly, not all of them. Postpone entity coaching and mentoring plan involving frequent direct contact with our quality master trainer and the trainer we prepare to support us in all vocational institutions. Temporarily stopping competence assessment and verifications. And we very soon, maybe we will start again face-to-face. Lack of activity cooperation from stakeholders to implement activities during the current health crisis COVID-19, because most of our stakeholder is work remotely, so we can't make the assessment and the verifications. The point number three is new normal and invitation approach to skill development post COVID-19. Number one is assess the current situation of competence assessment and verifications. Again, we hope we start very soon after this crisis is finished. Assessment and verification activity will be completed remotely in case of this crisis is still effect on us. We will work remotely and try to find e-learning or electronic way to cover this issue. Form a remote stakeholder working group to review the recommended layers of TVET quality assurance and agree further development. If we have opportunity to work face-to-face with our stakeholder, we will do that immediately. If the crisis is still stop us to working directly with our stakeholder, we will make a remotely working group. After that, we complete development future e-learning courses and web portal platform. We have a platform now for TVET institutions, and we put some courses, some e-learning courses inside that, and start to train our quality master trainer to dealing with e-learning courses such as self-assessment and improvement plan. The other, some point for collaboration and partnership between countries for sharing best practice. Point number one is setting an international standard for the technological skills required for emergency situations. When this crisis is coming and we try to make some remote working group, we face some issue because some of our official employment is have some kind of technological skills not linked with what we like to do or what we need to do. So we need to setting an international standard for the technological skills required for the emergency situations and train people on this. Determine the critical skills necessary to analyze situations and find the quick practical solutions. Critical thing is the most skills needed after this crisis, because many company is rethinking again about who is have this critical things inside between their staff, who is have a critical thing, who can make a decision, a quick decision based on the situations. Another point is define mechanism for developing the skills of employees and workers and adapting learning new skills in a short time according to the needs of the labor market. We develop a program for TVET to make a good connection between them and the labor market. We need all of them involved in the labor market based on their skills. We need labor market to accept our graduate from all TVET centers. So we need to make sure that this skills is needed inside the labor market, and our trainee or our graduate have these skills. Another point is building an electronic platform globally for the mutual exchange of creative practice, the ability of produce new and unique idea, and innovations practice in implementing innovations, that is introducing an idea or solution or process or new product. We need to put our focus in how to creative practice, and how to support the people who make this creative practice globally, and exchange this idea between the country, and make a platform to exchange this idea with copyright for anyone, of course, but we need to dealing with best practice as it happened in another country, based on what we can take from this best practice and make it apply in our country. Another point is building a quality assurance system for skill development institutions. Every country have a model, or most countries have their own model for quality assurance system. My point here is to building a quality assurance system for skill development institutions applied for most country, or country in the same area, or country with the same interesting. Determines a code of ethics for employee, workers, and campaigns to abide by its time of crisis. When this crisis is come affected on all country, most of people, not most of, some of people is lose their job, some of company is closed or needs to close, to shut down their activity now. So we need to put code of ethics for employee and the company to make sure that the relationship is still good and everyone is feel safe when he dealing with this company. Thank you for all of you for listening, and I hope you are safe and very well. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Dr. Abdou. Very interesting and valuable suggestions and inputs for collaboration between countries. We'll come back to the Q&A a little later. Our next speaker for the evening, Mr. Jonathan Ledger from the United Kingdom. If you see that the background where he's sitting, initially I thought that was a painting or a photograph, but I came to know that that is a view outside his window of his house. And I'm envious, and I'm sure all of you watching it will be as envious as I am as well. Jonathan is the CEO of Global Skills Ledger Limited and is a technical and vocational educational and training specialist for the UK government's Department for International Trade Education team. He was formerly the CEO of ProSkills UK group of companies, consisting of the ProSkills Sector Skills Council, the National Skills Academy for Materials Production and Supply, and Occupational Awards Limited for over the last 10 years. I think it was during that time I had an opportunity to meet him and visit the work, see the work that he was doing in UK. I think it was sometime in 2014 or 15 on one of my visits. His expertise is to lead the development of international TVET opportunities for UK skills and education providers, developing the UK TVET export capacity and promoting UK's capabilities in the sector. He works across the entire embassy and high commission networks to understand where opportunities exist and to promote how the UK is well qualified to be able to undertake the specific roles. As a TVET evangelist, Jonathan remains a world-class skills practitioner, developing TVET solutions across the globe. He also works in partnership with the Foreign and Commonwealth Office and the Department of International Development in a leading cross-government role to develop, manage, and implement overseas development assistance funded skills project being delivered in multiple countries and continents. Jonathan, over to you.
Thank you all very much indeed, and thanks for that introduction. Yes, and it is still just as sunny and hot as it looks in my background at the moment. So the UK is not like you think. It is actually sunny and dry and hot at the moment, although we are expecting our good friend the rain to arrive at some point over the next few days. So I'm going to take a slightly different approach. I'm going to talk about some of the impact on the UK in terms of COVID and the impact on technical and vocational college, and talk about some of the solutions that we have worked on and that we're still developing, of course, because I think we're all struggling with the length of this COVID situation and the uncertainty of the fact that it won't be finished tomorrow or next week, we're not really sure. And so this in itself, you know, is causing us to think differently about the way that we are progressing with our students in education. So it's always going to be a challenge, I think. And at the moment, you know, we're really not expecting students to be back in class full time until September at the earliest. We have some students in high priority areas that are doing some work in colleges, and our colleges have remained open throughout. But, you know, capacity is very much down. Many workers are furloughed or parked, so we're not at full capacity in the colleges either. So it's pretty big impact. And of course, that generally starts with the employers, which is what technical and vocational skills is all about. It's about what is the impact for the individuals and what is the impact for employers, because without employers, you have nothing anyway. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that as we go through the presentation. And I'm conscious that, you know, we're slightly overrunning, so I'll attempt to keep to my 10 minutes. And as some of my colleagues will verify, occasionally I am known to go over my slot, but I'll try and keep within 10 minutes. Look, all of you, doesn't matter which country you're in or which industry sector, we are all trying to do the same thing, and that is get the right people with the right skills for the right jobs at the right time. And that is made much more difficult by COVID and by our current situation. And what I mean by our current situation is that a lot of technical and vocational skills have traditionally been taught as a hands-on type approach. In a college, you know, we do bricklaying or plumbing or whatever the skill is, and typing on computers, but it has to be practical. That's the essence of what technical and vocational education is all about. But actually, I would say that we've moved into a new era, and all COVID has done is highlighted the shortfall of TVET and TVET providers and brought to our attention the need to move faster and quicker and to be more agile. And that's because technology and TVET have traditionally not come together and worked like strawberries and cream. They are not in harmony. Traditional TVET has always remained traditional, and technology has always run away with TVET. So we need to find new ways to bring the two together. And when you look at technology, it often moves quicker than the government reacts or that training providers react. And so on screen at the moment, you see my dotted lines, and we talk about, you know, the development of technology. And if you think about your own skills and the fact that actually at the moment we've all suddenly had to learn how to conduct meetings and do work on Microsoft Teams or Zoom or whatever technology platform it is that you're using. And then usually what happens is that individuals learn to pick up that technology next. And so, you know, they will learn those skills, but actually they're often self-taught. Businesses are always behind them. So the businesses take even longer to pick up those skills and to be able to use that kind of technology. And then we have a policy deficit because government policy around technology use in education settings often takes even longer, because it takes a number of years for that technology to be tested. And so here we are talking about skills and impact on skills and use of technology. And actually, we're all behind the curve. We're all a long way out, because, you know, individuals are already picking up some of these skills. And why are they doing that? Because they need to be able to do their job, to live their lives, to order food, you know, all sorts of different reasons why they're picking this up. And our job is to provide a range of skills that fill some of these gaps and enable people to progress in their lives, regardless of the situation. I did a piece of work in Europe recently, and the biggest barrier for implementation of Industry 4 technologies was actually the lack of skills and knowledge amongst staff and the insufficient training. And there were factories that had implemented Industry 4 technologies, and even the managers didn't know how those technologies work. So in the world of TVET, where hands-on skills are really important, and you are taught by your seniors how to, you know, do a job like in an apprenticeship, how can you mentor somebody remotely at that through technology if you don't even have those skills yourself? And so this is often the biggest barrier and the most denied barrier. Most managers think, hey, I'm good with technology, when in fact their skills are not very good, and they need to understand that they are not very good. So that's a big problem. Some of the impact in the UK. So 700 700,000, not 700, 700,000 apprentices suddenly are no longer at college or working with their training provider. So huge impact on students. 26,500 tutors and trainers and mentors suddenly not working in the system. So all of that has been removed from the capacity and the capability of the TVET system. And that's had an impact on 305 colleges, 6,500 training providers, independent training providers that deliver TVET skills, apprenticeships, and all of the skills that are associated with TVET. And the financial impact so far is a loss of £300 million and climbing. So, you know, let's not underestimate the impact of COVID on technology and on delivering those kind of workplace skills that you're all looking to do. The skills landscape is particularly complex in the UK. I find it really easy, but you know, we have a particular economy and a particular society that means we have, you know, everything from assessment to labour workforce studies and all the technology, the components that fit in across that chain, that value chain of TVET that have been affected. If there are no employers, how can you talk to your employers at the moment about what they need? If those employers are not open, how can you work with apprentices that are working in those companies? How can you deliver a service to those people that most need it, the hard to reach people, special education needs? So it's not just those like you and me that are working, it is about those young people, those hard to reach people, those companies which are small and medium that have had real impact from COVID that we need to be thinking about. And our job is to really touch as many of these buttons as we can in terms of workforce development and assessment practices. So implications of COVID on future means that the skill set, I think, will change. The employment market will change because the skills demands that employers had before COVID will be different afterwards. And the reason that they will be different is we are working in different times. And already, if you think about many of you are working from home, that means that some of you will have pretty good technology skills and able to Zoom meetings when they go wrong and things like that. But, you know, it all takes a kind of bit of thinking about. And so we will have to train our managers and our staff to work with this technology so it becomes much more second nature. And not just to think about those hard skills, but the soft skills, the welfare skills. You know, all of you are working at home. You might suffer with mental health issues, and you need to be able to kind of help your staff with that, or help students with that, because they will struggle to be on their own in a situation where they don't have many friends, they can't see their friends, and that will impact their learning as well. So we need to think about the ways that not only do we deal with the skills, but we deal with the welfare and the health and the safety of those individual students, the teachers and the employers. And that will mean a range of skills. So we talk about TVET as being the hands-on skills, but actually, I think in the future, we'll be much more thinking about entrepreneurial skills. So if you think about a furniture maker, for example, a furniture maker makes excellent chairs and tables and staircases or whatever it is that they need to make. But usually these people are not very good at running a business. And so part of our job will be to give them those business skills and those entrepreneurial skills so that they can go out into that new world, whatever that new world will end up looking like, with the right kind of skills to be able to deliver that in a new environment. And so this range of skills that we're teaching in TVET during these times is changing. So some of it is around core skills, those hard skills. Some of it is around foundation, so improving language skills or numeracy skills. Some of it is around improving business skills and entrepreneurial skills. And of course, in that process, using different technologies from artificial intelligence to virtual reality. Maybe we're even using Industry 4 key enabling technologies to actually progress through sensors and things like that. So wide range of technologies being looked at and used in the world of TVET. So what needs to be looked at? We have to look at policy changes and policy level changes that enable some of the TVET to shift to online practices, because this is a long-term change. This is not a short-term blip. This is a long-term change for everybody around the world. And all TVET institutions are going to have to think about, or particularly governments will have to think about it as well, how that interacts with the rest of the world in a global economy. Then we have system changes that we need to make. So, for example, in the UK, the awarding organisations and the regulators had to look at the way that exams are scored and assessments are carried out and what is acceptable. So now we're seeing a lot more remote assessment. So watching students build walls, for example, at their homes and using that video assessment with a tutor that might be the other end of the United Kingdom, assessing their capability and their capacity to pass that qualification. So there's a lot more remote kind of activity, and the system needs to be geared in a way that enables that change to happen. It's not just a case of taking a qualification and suddenly changing the assessment practice, because that assessment practice still must be robust and quality assured and still meet the requirements of the awarding organisation. So that's really important. Then we have to make institutional changes. So our colleges and our universities, big buildings, we don't need them anymore. In the future, they're going to be much smaller because there'll be many more students working from home and being taught from home. So why do we need all this empty space? So they will have to make changes about the way they operate and the way they care for their students. And then that brings us on to employers, of course, my favorite subject, the employers, because everything we should do should be about employers. Employers need to continue to be part of that discussion. But if those employers have gone out of business, how do you engage with the rest of the sector? And that will mean some challenges in making sure that your intelligence is bang up to date to make sure that you're meeting the needs of employers today. And so we are using technology to be able to talk to employers and to have online forums to make sure that the education system is still doing the right thing in the right way. And in fact, even yesterday, there was a parliamentary debate on UK TV around a group of employers and employer associations and learning associations about what is required today, because already what employers need now is different to March. So that's how quick the world has changed. And then we have the individual. I've already talked about some of the things that we need to consider with individuals around welfare and health and safety. But, what if you have disabled people that are students and they need extra support? How are you going to deliver that support? And it might mean that the colleges have to supply equipment to those students to enable them to carry on with their learning, because particularly if they're disabled and they don't have much money, they might not be able to afford the technology. And these telephones that we all have, which hopefully you can see mine, there it is in front of my nose, these phones are not going to show you everything. And so we need to find ways to deliver that knowledge and those skills through lots of technologies. And if you're living in a region where broadband and internet speeds are poor, it's no good doing lots of online activity if you can't download the materials. So we have to think about, can we deliver this over television, radio, podcasts, a whole range of different media, not just teaching through Skype or teaching through Zoom. That's not what's required. So quite a lot of changes have to be thought about in the whole levels of the architecture of the TVET system. And just a couple more slides, if I may, just to get us through some of this. So organizational practices need to change. Ecosystem needs to change. The products and services that colleges and training providers are putting out there need to still be in tune with what employers want, but also more focused on using this multimedia platform of delivery to be able to reach those students. And of course, the teaching and learning practices need an overhaul as well. And in many countries that I work, teaching pedagogy is not up to date. It's not as modern as it should be. And so that will be even more of a struggle because the gap is even bigger than it is from the UK's perspective. The infrastructure needs to be embedded within employer psyche and employer thinking. If we are not helping people with the skills that they need to do their job, we need to stop what we are doing. And so this word about high quality skills and the way that we embed those skills through using technology is still important. So one of the things, for example, is I've seen some real innovations in the hospitality sector where people are being taught how to cook via TV. So students watch TV programs, and then they connect via in Zoom, and effectively you have a big class of cooking programs that happen in 25 different kitchens around the UK. And those kind of technologies are going to be the way that stuff is taught in the future. So it's going to be really interesting, I think, and a good thing for technical and vocational training in the long run. So we talked about industry engagement, and it's really important that we keep up to date with what employers want, because, you know, their vision is changing very quickly about where they see their skills base in the future and their workforce demographics. And I can tell you now, we're already seeing a shift in workforce demographics. There are a lot of workers that are now displaced, they've lost their jobs, they're being parked, and when they come back to work, there will be no work for them because some of those companies won't be there, and they will have to change jobs. And so your vocational systems need to be flexible and agile enough to allow people to go back to the bottom of the ladder, learn new skills from the beginning and start again. And in the UK, our system doesn't just allow us to progress forward or up. We can go sideways, left, right, down, we can go back to the bottom. So just because we've got a degree doesn't mean we're clever. If you need another skill to get another job, go back to the bottom and start again. Nobody is so clever that you can't start again. And you need to build that into your thinking in your qualification systems. And many of you don't have that flexibility, but you need it to be able to survive. And then finally, when we look at this, our expertise around what we can help you with covers a whole range, and I'm not going to list that because I am conscious of time and we have another speaker yet. So, but look, lots of changes going on, lots of use of technology, and no doubt lots of people are knocking on doors, you know, promoting their technologies. I'm not here to do that. I'm here to talk about some of the things to get you thinking about what needs changing. So thanks very much indeed, everybody. I hope you have some questions for me. That's the bit I find most interesting, are the questions. So please put them in that question and answers box on your screen. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you, Jonathan. Very strong points put across, and we're going to come back to you with some more questions. We move on to our last speaker for the evening, Mr. Johan Peter. He's a vocational education specialist based in Germany. He has previously worked as a project manager for the National Service of Commercial Apprenticeship in Brazil. He says he spent a lot of time in Brazil during his growing up years and has conducted a PhD research on the integration of TVET in systems of innovation at the University of Osnabrück in Germany. Mr. John currently works as an independent consultant on innovation in TVET for the UNESCO UNIVOC International Center for Technical and Vocational Education and Training. He's currently in Barcelona in Spain. He managed to reach there before the lockdown, and I understand he's still there. Over to you, Peter.
Mr. Simon and dear participants, thank you very much for this opportunity. I hope everyone's listening, it's being able to listen to me. Unfortunately, there's some sound in the background. My apartment is really close to the street, and they decided to create a whole different street here in front of me exactly in this moment. I'm very sorry for this, but I hope everyone's being able to hear me. Could you please share the presentation that I've sent you? Just waiting. Yes, from the beginning, please. First slide, please. Exactly. So, well, thank you very much for the invitation. It's a great pleasure for me to be here to talk a little bit about my work and everything that we have been doing in the specific PhD research, but also in the work with UNESCO UNIVOC in Bonn, in Germany, and the different projects on innovation and TVET. I was invited to talk a little bit, as everyone, to talk a bit about the impact of COVID-19 in the case of Germany. So, as explained, I am German and Brazilian. I've lived most of my life in Brazil, but I've moved to Germany in the last years, and I have been researching the subject, not only exclusively the case of Germany, but also different other cases in the world, but mostly in Europe. But the case of Germany, I think that it's very specific. So I will try to formulate a little bit on this subject. Could you please pass another slide? Great. So let's talk about, first of all, a little bit about the German dual system. I think that most of you know that Germany is well recognized as a very stable and traditional system of vocational education. It's a system that it's based on two different venues of learning. So to say, you have on one hand the school-based training, on the other hand, you have the in-company training. It's based on apprenticeship system, so which means that students are apprentices and they receive a specific amount of salaries for their study. They're actually workers in a company. So I think this specific detail in the case of Germany makes the whole discussion on the COVID-19 very different. It's very specific. So we have a situation where you have work-based learning is 17% and school-based learning is 30%. And we will discuss this in the next slide, but there's the impact of COVID-19 on work-based learning, it's much more relevant than in school-based learning, at least in the case of Germany. No, sorry, can you just come back one slide? Yes. Just to data, we have almost 52% of young Germans are graduating in a dual TVET apprenticeship. So which shows that there's a large number of students, and of course, there's the idea of a social partnership between the state, companies, and students. Everyone is engaged in the process, but at the same time, everyone admits, for example, companies, they will have to pay for the process of the students. The federal states, they have to pay for the work-based, the school-based learning. And students, they also accept the possibility of receiving a salaries. They are not necessarily the same salaries that you would receive in a normal labor market. So there's a certain compromise from all the different sides. That's why we call it a social partnership. So please, the next slide. So the COVID-19 in Germany, what happened? Germany was one of the countries in Europe that had a high number of cases, so to say, almost 200,000 cases. For example, in Spain, we had 50,000 cases more than Germany. So the difference is not that huge, so to say. But the big difference in the case of Germany is that the number of deaths was really low compared to the rest of, for example, compared to Italy, compared to UK, or to Spain or France. In Spain, for example, you had almost four times more deaths. So this is a big difference that also makes the situation of Germany very particular in this case. We have at this moment more or less 8,000 people who are still infected, or patients in hospitals. In this week now, there was a situation where a new wave, it's starting to emerge. There was one specific case in one city where 1,000 new cases appeared in one specific company, in a company, meat processing company in one city. They were still working because it's a very important sector. They were still working in the workplace, and it happened that more than 1,000 people in that company were infected with the virus, which shows the importance, so to say, of the measures of isolation in general. So in this situation, what can we talk about the TVET system? What's the impact on the TVET system? So please, the next slide. Yes, some things here are important to mention. As I said before, the case of Germany is very focused on apprenticeship. And the main impact on the apprenticeship in the case of Germany, it's not necessarily on the school-based learning. Because in Germany, there's a big separation between school-based learning and work-based learning in the apprenticeship. Usually, international analysts or people who don't have much experience in the case of Germany tend to think that there's a certain symbiotic relationship between companies and schools, and which is not true. Companies, they have a very specific system to work, and schools, they have a very specific system to work. So there is not a lot of integration or cooperation. What you have actually is a high level of commitment from companies. For the side of the companies, you have a high level commitment with vocational education, but it doesn't mean that schools and companies are necessarily well integrated. And this is showing very clear in the situation now. You have, one hand, the school-based learning basically moved everything to online learning because it's a very theoretical system. It's almost as a standard, so to say, secondary level or high school, for example. I come from a country in Brazil, for example, where my high school was extremely theoretical and very comprehensive. So the case in the school-based learning in Germany is very similar, including the structures. It's not necessarily a modern structure, but when we look at, for example, the size of the companies, then there's a whole different scenario. But so once again, the biggest challenge is how can you move to online learning or blended learning in the case of apprenticeship? So how can you make sure that online learning is able to be done in work-based learning? What's happening in Germany is that basically the work-based learning is a problem of the companies. So the companies are the ones having to deal with the challenges related to a work-based learning. Because in the end, these people, the students that are there, they're not only students, they're workers. And being workers, the company, by legislation, is the responsible for providing the education for these students. So the federal states or the state in general will provide resources and will provide solutions for the school-based learning, but not necessarily for the companies-based learning. Also because in the case of Germany, home office in the vocational education, it's not authorized. It's by legislation. Companies don't have the right to provide vocational education in home office. So you need to be physically present so that you can have the development of the work-based learning. This is the idea that it's behind the structure of the system in Germany. The question is, how do you change this now? Or do you need to change? Because Germany, considering that the impact is not being so dramatic as it is in other countries, the question in Germany is, do we need to change the system that has been working so well for so many decades, almost centuries now? And so this is a question that, for example, as Mr. Ledger mentioned, because we don't know how long this crisis is going to be, we stay in a situation there. Should we promote substantial changes? Should we reform or revolutionize TVET, or should we find temporary solutions for this moment? So far, what has been done was temporary solutions. So it's very similar solutions to what Dr. Abou mentioned, for example. You have all the tests are interrupted. They are now coming back because the situation is already getting much better in Germany. So they are being able to come back to the normal economy, so to say. But in the case of the companies, they basically stopped working. And as other companies in the world did. So it's the situation. No, please don't change now. The situation, it's much harder at this moment for the companies. But there is also, of course, the possibilities of developing supportive technology, as Mr. Ganes presented, supportive technology to help to the delivery of vocational education during the COVID-19. However, here we have a challenging situation, because we have, on one hand, you have technologies such as virtual reality or augmented reality. They are clearly capable of providing some simulation effect or to provide some, to give students a certain level of proximity with the practice, even though they are not in this scenario. However, these are technologies that are, it depends on a lot of resources so that it can be implemented, and also depends on capacity building so that you can actually implement this in a positive, with positive results. And we don't have the time at this moment to move all these training to virtual reality or augmented reality in a context that you don't know what's going to be the impact in 3 and 6 months. So these are some of the issues that in terms of policy, what institutions are thinking about now. And the other aspect, and this is also related to what I've been doing with my work at UNIVOC in Bonn, it's understanding what are the qualifications that are needed at this moment. So this is a question that vocational education has always addressed, but maybe now it becomes even more important. So I work in a project called the BUILD project in UNIVOC. And in this project, we have this specific idea of trying to understand what are the new qualifications and competencies that are important for the world of work in Europe. But in the next year, it's going to be expanding for Asia and Africa. But at this moment, we are developing a trends mapping study. And in this trends mapping study, in the middle of the way, we were surprised with the COVID-19 crisis. So we had to now to change a little bit our perspective and to try to understand COVID-19 also as a factor of disruption in qualifications and competencies. So in Germany specifically, there is a long list of occupations that has been identified as important occupations. So for example, you have protection and security professionals, you have circular and waste management specialists, emergency medic, medical technical laboratory assistants. There's a list of almost 20 occupations that at this moment are extremely urgent, which means that they need to be at this moment revisited and to understand what are the competencies that are needed to be implemented in this case to deal with the COVID-19 crisis, and how can you focus on providing these professionals or so to say recycling their skills in a very fast time. This is one of the possibilities. And finally, the aspect of considering that the apprenticeship system in Germany, and most of the challenges are being focused now on the size of employers and companies. It's also important to say that not all the employers and companies are the same, and all of them, and it's not the case that all of them have the same condition to invest in vocational education. So very important that small and medium companies are now facing a challenge that it's much bigger than the challenge they were already facing before. In Germany, small and medium companies do not have the same capacity as big companies. So if you compare, for example, companies such as BMW or Mercedes-Benz, these big companies in Germany, they have a whole process and structure, and they are able to use virtual reality or augmented reality in some cases. But small and medium companies at this moment, they don't have the expertise, they don't have the capacity to do this, they don't have the resources to do this, and they don't even know if they're going to resist the whole crisis. So there's also a need to understand that policy for TVET at this moment needs to focus on the capacity of small and medium companies to engage with work-based learning. And finally, the last slide. This is the website of the UNESCO UNIVOC Bridging Innovation in Learning in TVET project. There you can find a little bit more about what we are doing, and also a bit more about the results of several different work streams. We're working with greening, with digitalization, with migration and entrepreneurship. So we are trying to understand what are the innovations in these 4 specific areas. So you will be able to find more information. And as I said, in the next year, the plan is to expand this project and include institutions from Asia and from Africa. So I would strongly suggest, if there is any interest of your institutions, to engage in this project and possibly you can contact me, or I can help with the content. And if someone already participate as the Univoc network member, it's of course much easier to have access. But if not, I would also make here a suggestion to participate as an institution member of the network of Univoc, because it's something that in general helps collaboration and partnership with other countries, and it's a very interesting atmosphere and ambience to discuss. Thank you very much for it. I hope I didn't go beyond my time.
Yeah.
And if anyone has any specific questions, I would be very happy to address them. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Peter. I have my first question over to Dato Sri Ganesh. You had mentioned about the national occupational standards which are available in Malaysia, right? Coming to the question of collaborating between countries, how you think this NOSIS can be made effective? Is there a possibility that the NOSIS can be transnationalized across different countries, where at the end of the day, the certified employees can cross borders and go for employment with whichever country the collaboration has happened? Is that a possibility which can work?
You see, of course, what we are discussing now, this has been taken precedence before, but in terms of train-the-trainer thing, whereby countries like Vietnam and Cambodia has come over to Malaysia to do the train-the-trainer thing, whereby they adopt good practices to further enhance it in their country, right? But that has no long-term plan, you see. It is come as they need. But what I see is that borderless employment, it is very possible, especially now, when TVET can be delivered through online. Basically, we have to agree on the language and the what would I say, these skill standards. For instance, to be a competent electrical technician, someone has to comply to his local certification, right? So that will be the issues. But if we can agree on a common framework, which will take time, I think this is not impossible. But currently, a lot of effort has been going on for us to streamline this skills thing, and this pandemic has actually pushed it further, whereby I think various skill trainers are conducting training in Malaysia. Likewise, Malaysian trainers are conducting training through online overseas. So I think this is well received. This is my opinion.
At the same time, you are talking of the practical training methods, right? Using your scanning labs. Excellent proposition. I think really a food for thought for different ecosystems to adopt. How well has it been accepted among the trainees? You know, definitely it cannot replicate what you get on the ground, but what has been the general mood? Has it really compensated for what is happening today?
See, the situation was a bit different. When there's nothing to look forward to during the pandemic, this excites them. You know, this excites them actually. But over a period of time, there will be a question how this is close to reality, how this can be perceived as value-added training and so on. So this comes with the basis of understanding how this thing works. It works better on a virtual reality gadgets when you put on your goggles and you start going into the virtual world, right? This will be useful. Like acceptance levels are there, but it's too early for us to comment on this because critical trainings like oil and gas platforms and all that, it is expensive to replicate those platforms in colleges. So this method actually works when it comes to scanning, right? But not for all typical courses. When it comes to culinary, there will be an issue whereby you need a standalone culinary kit back at your training place as well while you are doing a walkthrough. So this is my take on this.
Thank you, Dr. Ganesh. And Dr. Abdou, you're mentioning about an electronic platform for collaboration between countries on training, right? On the same subject, getting into digital platforms and training, is it a cost addition to training partners, which will indirectly go to the trainees as well? Your mic is on mute. I think you would unmute the mic.
This idea is connected with the free platform. We use a model. So we have a website for Ministry of Education for any ministry in Egypt. So we create a model system inside this website and train our people through this platform. We have most of the PhD research in Egypt, especially in technology, have their own website. I have my own website. It's this platform not cost me more money, but it's free because I use model. I just need to have the last version of model, and I have to skill myself and skill others to how to use this. I train many people in Egypt through my own platform for e-learning strategy. And I mentioned that I will answer the questions from some trainees. How can plan for particular training through online platform?
Yeah.
Yeah. If you
please. That's the question.
Do now? Okay. Please, Shwani, let me share my screen, and I will give a model for few minutes. Yes. Can I share? Yeah. Okay. First, at all, you need to make a plan. Like what do you see the screen? It's e-learning plan. For if you try to make a course or create a course for e-learning material, you need to move step by step. Step 1 is agree outline of e-learning module or program with the authority, of course. Agree development plan with allocation of activity Excel grant chart, recorded checklist, how to make sure that every step is how to make verification for your work after you finish. Step 2 is develop material presentation assessment. Planning involve regular meetings to discuss each item for e-learning after you finishing from this. Quality check can include sustainable quality from outside of the quality unit. You need to have another opinion. Train the material with outside participants. If you select some participant from some specific center, you need to bring another people to make a trail with them. Formal feedback and the evaluation of the trail. Final agreement of material of e-learning and upload material in your platform. This 3 steps is very simple, but it's complicated some time if you move or forget one of this step. After you make this simple plan, you need to prepare another file like this. It's the outline of the program. I will share them one of this. This is outline. This is the toolkit self-assessment and improvement development planning for TVET institutions. The type of this paper is outlined for e-learning module or program. I prepared it in 26 May 2020 this year, and I'm the author of this outline. Okay. Introduction. Egypt is moved now to design courses using e-learning strategy to cover 2 categories. So when I prepare this outline, I need to mention, is this outline for 1 category or 2 categories? I prepare it for 2 categories. Category number 1 is online professional training course, a comprehensive training course with online training. It's live sessions. Category number 2 is online self-learning courses, online training courses with no trainer or live session. It's a recorded session so that trainee can come and train on the platform. This is outline of e-learning module program for toolkit, self-assessment, and improvement development planning for TVET institutions. The toolkit, after that, you need to explain every small detail inside this toolkit. The toolkit self-assessment and improvement plan for TVET institution will contain the following item: introduction. In this introduction, you put general objective for the program, implementation approach, which approach you will use with your trainee, code of conduct, the role of this training online, because you need to put this, and the commitment with the trainee, expectations for this program from the trainee, and the key terminology for this program, such as quality assurance system, self-assessment, improvement plan, follow-up plan, curriculum maps. Self-assessment, the third point is self-assessment concept and objective, because self-assessment there is many concepts for self-assessment. It's inside the head of some trainee. You need to make one concept and agree about the objective for your toolkit. TVET institution process of self-assessment, self-assessment steps, component of self-assessment plan. The fourth is self-assessment tools, checking of document, observation, questionnaire, interview, and how to prepare this tool, and provide another tool if you need that, if you take this from the expectation of your trainee. Implementing the self-assessment for TVET institution, how to prepare the self-assessment plan. Self-assessment based on evidence. If you make self-assessment without evidence, it's no self-assessment. Self-assessment is always based on evidence. Selection the sample of check type of information that are no longer a guide, models and relevant of manual. Self-assessment judgment, how do you make judgment inside when you prepare self-assessment. TVET institution will need to demonstrate it, make judgment, encourage all staff or participants and to contribute to process learner participation of relevant business owner, and honesty and objectivity. Evidence used to judgment include all self-assessment process inside this. After that, how to write the institution self-assessment report with the all content need to be included inside this report: title page, content, institution vision and mission, title page, content, basic statics, building status, self-assessment report, self-assessment form, result that you accomplish when you prepare this report, and the comprehensive view of effective.
Dr. Abdul, since we are running out of time, is it possible that we can share this document to the person who has asked a question?
Yes. And the final point I need to finish this answer is the toolkit content in TVET LMS. When you upload this in TVET LMS, you put a course summary, title and objective of the training program, pre-test instruction, pre-test presentation of training program, live training session, recording training session, self-assessment steps, source and reference, assignment for the trainee, post-test instruction, post-test, self-assessment form, and the evaluation for the training program. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I hope, Mr. Ridhipal, your question has been answered. Quick question to Mr. Jonathan. You had spoken about institutions not being required going to the future. If you capture the sentiments today, yes, it is more towards digital learning and learning from home. But once this is all over and we have crossed the bridge, don't you think the trainees would like to come back to institutions and be there in the classrooms and training centers? Would you think that would reduce?
I think the world will change, and I think there will be some students that will prefer the learning from home or workplace learning. So very much like the German system, you know, we have many employers that are training providers as well in that sense. And so actually a lot of the workplace training takes place already in the workplace. 6 billion hours a year are spent by UK employers on workplace training. So there is a lot already happening in the workplace. And so you have to question whether these big buildings around the world are required to accommodate learning when in fact most of it is done by other means anyway. So, and it's an expensive, empty asset if you're not careful. It becomes a pointless asset. So you have to think about that. And you know, don't forget, I see around the world, I travel a lot to many countries, and I see a lot of big, you know, fantastic buildings, but they're not really being used in the way that they should be, and not really filling up in the way that they should be. So I don't see the point, and I think this will help to kind of depress the capacity in the system. If you look at universities as an example, I think in universities, the world could do with 50% less universities, and that's because many universities are actually just delivering mediocre skills. There are some good ones, of course, but there are many that are delivering mediocre skills. Many employers complain that universities are not delivering the workplace skills that are required. It's a major issue. And yet in Asia particularly, you know, you're all still very keen on universities and having 1 degree and 2 degree and 3 degrees. Well, let me tell you, you are looking at somebody that doesn't even know what a university looks like on the inside. I got my degrees while doing TVET, and you too could do the same, and so could your students. So it's far better to learn from the school of life than it is to learn from an empty building. So I think this will change the landscape in terms of the way buildings are put up for education establishments, and they will have to be much more integrated into the workplace in the future.
Very interesting point you made about entrepreneurship going forward. Just 2-3 job roles which is gaining momentum due to entrepreneurship in UK?
There's lots of job roles. So even if you think about, so all of our countries, I think are probably the same. 98% of businesses are small, medium businesses. So, you know, UK is a nation of shopkeepers used to be the phrase, and that's still the case. But actually it's true in India. You know, the informal sector is mostly small and medium companies, and it's the same in Germany, and many of the companies are small and medium companies. And so it's more than just learning your craft. You have to learn how to run a business successfully. And that's where the entrepreneurial bit comes in, because, you know, companies, small companies, are often the lifeblood of every company, and they have to look at new ways of diversifying their markets and sustaining their markets on a global stage with tough competition. And that's why the entrepreneurial spirit is so important. So for me, if we are delivering skills, even a bricklayer, if they have bricklaying skills without entrepreneurial and business skills, they will not survive in the workplace in the future.
Peter, last question to you. Germany being rigid about changing, right? It's exactly an opposite view of what Jonathan was saying about UK. Is that going to be sustaining the rigidity in the system? Because there is going to be some change which is going to evolve at the end of the day. A lot of new takeaways are coming, new plus points are coming out of the existing context. So the rigidity, you think the rigidity will remain in the system?
Well, I think in Germany in general, the German culture, it's not really into changes. It's a type of culture that the very idea of innovation in Germany, although Germany is possibly the most innovative country in the world in the international rankings, Germany, it has some ideas and some concepts and some aspects of their culture that it's really hard to change. They don't enjoy changes so much. They like doing the things the way they do because they understand that this is how it works. So vocational education is one of these elements. It's there was a study a few years ago that argued that actually vocational education in Germany, it's very flexible, and because it's flexible, it keeps going on during time. My argument is exactly the opposite. I think vocational education in Germany has a very stable idea of what it is and how it is supposed to be done. And this creates an issue also, for example, for German companies outside Germany. One of the aspects of why the German system it's being exported all over the world, it's in great part because German companies force countries and regions to implement the apprenticeship system, because otherwise this is a requirement for them to create industrial plants and to invest in the country itself. So this is the level of so to say, the dependence on this idea of vocational education. So I don't think that it's going to be possible in the near future to change some of the basic ideas of the vocational education system. And what are they doing in general to improve the vocational system is to change the content of what is being taught and changing, understanding better what are the profiles, the needs of the labor market, and adapting, updating curricula, and improving the use of technology in the schools, etc. But in terms of the structure of the system, I don't expect any change in the future, which is a problem, so to say, because there is in Germany, there is a big discourse and a big challenge now related to the low attractiveness of vocational education system. Basically, in Germany, most of the students prefer to go to university, and there is a certain idea that going to university allows you to have a higher status, which it's not necessarily true, especially in the case of Germany, because the difference in the salaries for someone who goes to university and someone who does vocational education in Germany, it's not big. It's actually quite small. And if you proceed in the vocational education system, goes to other levels of higher education, of vocational education, the salaries become exactly the same. So it's more a question of the status of education and what's the social status of education. So it's all this discussion. I understand that they understand that they have a problem. They know that there is a low attractiveness, but they are not willing to change the system to make it more attractive. What they want to change, it's what the system is offering, the qualifications, the curricula, the content. They want to make teachers more prepared to do this. They want to use more technology. They want to have to implement a certain idea of modern vocational education with the use of technology. But they are not willing to change some of the basic structures that are creating a lack of flexibility that it's going to be needed in the next years. So I think that it's always very hard to predict what's going to happen in the future. Even when you work with innovation, you understand that it's not possible to predict. But in my opinion, and this is my personal opinion, this is not Univoc's opinion, this is not my university's opinion, it's my personal opinion. I tend to think that the German system will, the level of relevance of the German dual system in the world is going to decrease in the next years, because there are different models, they are more flexible, and they are more related to needs of the labor market that, for example, the Canadian system or the Chinese system, or even in the Basque Country in Spain also. So there are different models that are emerging, and possibly the German system will, the relevance will decrease. So maybe in the future, this will create a situation. But for now, I don't think nothing's going to happen.
Thank you so much, Peter. Very interesting point of view from your side. I don't know whether you noticed Jonathan giving you a thumbs down and shaking his head when he said you had to go to the university. Nevertheless, friends, I think we have terribly run out of time. It's been such a pleasure to be here amongst all of you with different takeaways out of the session. A lot of different points of view have emerged, and I'm sure the viewers who are listening to you over the last an hour and a half have taken a lot of positives out of this discussion. Thank you all for coming on board and sparing your valuable time. I know you're sitting across different time zones. Some of you are, it's time for dinner, while some of you it's time for lunch. Great having you on board with us on behalf of the Rubber Skill Development Council. Over to you, Shivani.
Thank you, sir. Definitely, sir. It was a very interesting session, and I believe our audience acquired a detailed insight from our eminent speakers. Once again, on behalf of all of us at Rubber Skill Development Council, I would like to thank our eminent speakers for their valuable time and inputs they have shared with us and our audience. And at last but not the least, to all our participants also who has logged in from different locations across the country and globe. Due to time constraint, as we are not able to take all the questions at the moment, I'll request the audience to send their questions to RSTC office, and we will get you the response from our respective speakers. Once again, on behalf of all of us at RSTC, thank you to our esteemed speakers and participants. Stay healthy and goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you. See you then. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you.